heading in.
Persona 5 Strikers is an excellent little addition to the series that's both a continuation of Persona 5 and a wild departure from the norms of the franchise. It's a direct sequel to Persona 5. It's so direct, in fact, that you basically need to have played either Persona 5 or Persona 5 Royal to know who the characters are, what's going on with the metaverse, and to have a basic understanding of some of the game's systems. Because Strikers doesn't really explain much of anything about any of that, but you should know the game is more a sequel to Persona 5, so it doesn't continue on with anything that was added in Royal, which, for those that don't know, was basically an extended cut version of Persona 5 with added characters and more to do. The story in Strikers relies heavily on the fact that you know the characters from the previous game already, so it's not going to do any of that work. Now, it does carry those characters forward by giving the characters some sort of personal connection to the different bosses in the game, so it does feel like a bit of a personal journey, and that's why the game is such a welcome addition, because it's probably the last adventure we'll get with these characters before the series moves on to a new cast. It almost feels like this could have just been a long DLC for Persona 5, and that they handed the combat off to a different developer for some reason. Where Persona 5 was time spent during the school year, Strikers is summer vacation. In fact, it's a road trip. The characters end up getting an RV and stopping in cities across Japan. And as they do, they discover dungeons to explore because certain people are robbing the citizens of their desires, and it's up to the Phantom Thieves to put a stop to it. But let's talk about how stylish these games are, because Persona 5 was one of the most anime games I've ever seen. It's so stylish from the menus, the music, the art style, the HUD, the combo abilities, and the all-out attacks you can do. It just looks incredible, especially if you like anime. And Strikers carries on that same style really well. The way they were able to recreate it is pretty astounding. Some of the tracks from Persona 5's excellent moody, jazzy soundtrack return here, and some of them are even redone, but faster. Persona 5's soundtrack is excellent for a rainy day. But Strikers is a little more upbeat, and it should be. It's accompanying a summer road trip, and it fits so well. The new tracks are excellent additions to an already fantastic soundtrack. And it's not lost on me that the soundtrack opts for faster-paced, more upbeat music to go along with its much faster-paced, action-oriented combat, diverging from the series' slower turn-based combat. But the developers have also done a great job of adapting a lot of the systems from Persona 5's combat into their Musou-style action combat game. In fact, it took me a while to adjust to the idea that if I was running out of healing items and special energy, or if I was getting into an area that I felt a little underpowered for, I could just leave and go around town restocking on healing items, or even jump back into a previous dungeon, they're called jails in Strikers, to grind for level and items before going back to try to advance the story. In Persona 5, everything you did would advance time, so you only had so many things you could do before advancing the calendar by a day, and you had strict timetables for things where certain story events would happen on specific days, so you had to be efficient at using your time. And I remember that stressing me out quite a bit as I played that game, so the fact that Strikers gets rid of all of that stress is very welcome, but it also took me a little while to adjust. But let's talk more about the combat, because it's easily the biggest departure from Persona 5. This game goes away from the turn-based combat the series is known for, and of course features action-oriented Musou-style, combo-driven combat where you're taking on tons of enemies all around you. As a result, combat can be very overwhelming at first. I feel like it took me nearly halfway through the game before I really felt like I was getting a solid grip on the combat. Early on, I found it way too easy to get surrounded and to just get ping-ponged back and forth between enemies that were just off screen because the camera just doesn't have an answer for the sheer number of enemies you're encountering sometimes. And it's worth mentioning, Persona 5 Strikers is a tough game. Maybe it's just me and it's because I'm a bit newer to the Persona series and this is my first Muso style game, but I found myself needing to stop trying to progress several times. I had to go to previous areas to grind for a little while before I could take on the next boss fight. But in doing that, I really started to feel like I learned how to play the different characters. Because much like Dragon Age Inquisition or even Final Fantasy VII Remake, among other games, this game allows you to swap back and forth between characters in your party at any time during combat. And it soon becomes clear that the best, most efficient way to deal damage to bosses is by switching back and forth between characters to take advantage of additional attacks. In fact, the game literally prompts you to swap the different characters when they have strong follow-up attacks or other types of special attacks available. And so it becomes necessary to understand how each character's combos work so that once you swap characters, you know how to deal damage with them. Thankfully, the game keeps it pretty simple. It's like Smash Brothers in that every character features the same inputs to achieve their abilities, but there are little subtle differences that makes it so you need to put in some time practicing to master each character. For instance, while controlling Ryuji, if I hit square square triangle and hold triangle, he'll charge up a powerful attack that sends out damage in a line in front of him. If I hit square 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 triangle and hold triangle, he'll use his persona to deal electricity damage. But if I hit square square triangle and hold triangle with Haru, she'll use her persona to do damage for several seconds. Square 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 hold triangle will do a spinning attack. And series newcomer Sophia's combos are more tied to timing those button presses to properly execute them. Joker, being the central character, is the only one who can access more than one persona, meaning he can deal different elemental damage depending on the fight. But he also has more combos and more variety to them than any other character. And all the characters have unique and fun jumping attacks. One minor complaint about this combo system is that the game doesn't list the available combos anywhere in the menu. Just like a fighting game, there should be a spot in the menu with every character's combos listed. Instead, I had to rely on trial and error, which meant I was still discovering combos and extra attacks on top of attacks that I felt like I should have known about much earlier in the game. You can have 4 characters in your party at any time, but one will always be Joker. That means you'll get to pick 3 people to take with you at a time. And I quickly discovered that I loved Haru's combos the most. They're wildly fun, but I also found Makoto and Sophia to be some of the best teammates to have with you for their mix of healing abilities and powerful combos and special abilities. But you can't settle into a normal crew and cruise through the entire game with them because different areas and boss fights will require you to use teammates with different elemental attacks. That means you may have to go grind previous jails if you've let a couple of your teammates lag behind while progressing everyone else. And that's one of the minor complaints I have with the game, but I say it's minor because Strikers is far from the only game that runs into this problem, but that wasn't the only reason I found myself needing to grind in this game. I frequently ran into boss fights or new areas in which I didn't have the right characters to efficiently deal damage because I had no way of knowing what type of elemental damage I was going to need. That meant I was going to give boss fights a shot only to lose and have to restart the battle. Thankfully, the game lets you swap out your party before retrying. On top of that, even the battles I did win left me with few healing items left because I was constantly using them to keep my team in the fight. So I had to go grind if only to go back and forth between the city and the jail to get the shops to refresh their stock so I could load up on healing items before heading to the next boss fight. Fortunately, the game lets you do this as much as you want, so it isn't hard to get a ton of money and items, but it is a little bit tedious. Nevertheless, I do think I came around on the combat in the end. I did get to a point where I really enjoyed the combos and the different characters and their abilities, and as hard as it was at times, overall I would say I enjoyed it, and I might have even liked it more than the turn-based combat. I'm not quite sure yet. I might have to go back and retry Persona 5 to know for sure. The only downside to Persona 5 and its combat is that you may have to back out of the metaverse and back out of progressing the story forward to go grind a little more often than you might want. Otherwise, I'm loving Persona 5 Strikers. I think there's a lot to it that I really enjoy. The music's great, the art style's great, the combat's fun, and yeah, I enjoy spending time with these characters. So, if you liked Persona 5, there's no reason to not give Persona 5 Strikers a shot. But that's going to do it for this one. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video, leave me a comment if you played Persona 5 Strikers, hit the subscribe button for more videos, and we'll catch you on the next one.